Hey,
Hello, how you doing?
doing all right. What's your situation looking like?
Things are going all right. Long year, busy, stressful year, but productive. Just watched the Jaguars lose another winnable game. So, pretty much standard fare for Jacksonville.
Hmm.
How about you? Where are you at right now?
I am at the Hotel Maggiore in Bologna, Italy.
Ooh,
And I'm drinking some local brew here. I don't know what it is, but it's actually pretty good, and it's a large bottle.
that's the important thing. So you're on the road now with Blaine.
Yeah, yeah, we just wrapped up a run here in Italy, so we're flying back to Athens tomorrow. Then got a day off, and then we're flying out to Belgium for a couple shows, and then I'm going to take the train to Berlin to drill up with Crime, and then we're going to do some shows in November with Crime.
Excellent. I remember last time we interviewed, you were talking about some of the complications as far as managing the logistics of travel through Europe and stuff in the whole post-pandemic era. How's that working out? Just getting from place to place. Are things opening up a bit?
Yeah, yeah. Everything is wide open. The problem is not regulations anymore. The
Hmm.
problem is the price. The price of everything has just skyrocketed, and I imagine it's probably the same
Yeah.
over there too. So yeah, airfare, gasoline, also traveling has just been, just when they open the floodgates for you, it becomes exorbitant. So a lot of folks have been canceling tours,
Mm.
especially in Europe. There's been a lot of announcements, and it's because specifically, just logistically, it's difficult, but it's still fun.
Oh yeah. So
It's
with
still
these price increases and stuff as far as travel, how does the what can the artists do to accommodate for that? Do you increase your booking fee? Do you charge more for ticket prices? I assume there's like a happy medium because you can increase prices a bit, but you don't want to like increase so much that it keeps anyone away.
Yeah, I mean, I leave all those decisions up to the promoters. I guess
Yeah.
they know their markets better than I do. So just for us, the important thing is just to survive, is just
Hmm.
to keep on. I mean, it's gonna get better.
Yeah.
So you just got to stay in the game. It's kind of like Vegas.
Hmm.
Just if you lose, if you leave the table, you're bound to lose. You've already lost. But if you stay at the table, you got a chance.
You're still in the game.
Like a terrible metaphor, but there it is.
Well, it depends on what kind of gambling you're doing. Certainly, with the music you and your colleagues have been doing, that's a pretty sure bet. Haha.
Ah,
And you've been performing in a couple of different formats. You're doing your own thing when you come down here through Florida, but you were doing Crime in the City and doing the stuff with Blaine. How are those two assignments in particular? How's that different as far as how you prepare uh, rehearsals, things like that?
well, Crime is more complicated because it's a big band with six people who live all over the place.
Mhm.
And that's where travel really becomes a killer. Now with Blaine, everything's easier because he lives right down the street from me,
Mhm.
and there's just two of us, and we've known each other for so long that it's just working together is second nature. So this is almost like a vacation. After we did about 6 weeks on the road with Crime, which
Mhm.
was fun work. It
Mhm.
was work, very
Yeah.
fun work. And with Blaine, with just everything is just very, very effortless and a whole lot of fun. It's not to say crime's not fun. Crime is a
Sure.
gas. Crime rules.
Hmm. How? Tell me a bit about Blaine. How do you first meet him?
I met him. I invited him to play on one of my albums in 2010. At that time, I was living in Brussels. He was living in Athens, and I'd met one of his colleagues in Tuxedo Moon who was still living in Brussels at the time, and he said, "Then just call up Blaine, and he'll play on your record." So that's exactly what I did. And then he would guest with my band, and we went on the road like that for a little while. We started playing his songs with my band backing him up, and we said, this is kind of fun. And my band disintegrated, and he started inviting me to do his solo shows, and they became duo shows.
Mm. Excellent. The album Lines of Flight has been percolating for a while. Tell me a bit about the response to that, and where you think you're seeing the most concentration of sales in the fan base and stuff.
Yeah, well, it came out a year ago. We pressed 100 copies on vinyl, 10-inch. They were all hand pressed by this guy in downtown Athens that's he's got two machines, and he ping pongs while he's cutting one machine. He's setting the other one up, and then he puts the vinyl on the other, and it's just a very interesting operation. It's all done one by one. So we couldn't do a very large run. Anyway, we pretty much sold all of them. I think I have a handful left at home that I will bring with me in December for the Georgio Valentino band shows. And yeah, I think people dug the record. It's hard these days to get press because we're just a little indie project. And so, yeah, there wasn't much in the way of reviews, but in terms of word of mouth, I think people liked it. And I see, people are still sharing this stuff on social media. So that's a good sign. It's got some legs.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, you're coming into Florida for December. This is your first time back in Florida in 8-9 months, something like that.
Yeah. Will be I came briefly in the springtime, but this will really be the first sustained visit since the pandemic.
Excellent. Tell me a bit about about your itinerary and the shows you'll be playing during that time, and also the musicians that will be playing with you.
Yeah, we got a nice long weekend lined up. We're going to start in Jacksonville. That's where the other musicians are from. Jason Irvin, who I used to jam with him back in college. I've known him forever. Great guy, great drummer. And also Jessica Walton is going to be playing with us. And so we're looking forward to that. So we're going to start in Jacksonville, play at Rain Dogs with the Creepy Tikis. Looking forward to that. And then we're going down to St. Augustine, where I was once a resident.
Yes.
The Dog Rose Brewing Company, very excited. They just celebrated their 5th anniversary, their 5th birthday party. I remember they invited me to play their 2nd birthday party. My, how time flies.
I remember that gig, I think.
And then we're going down to Miami to play at Gramps with your friend Tony.
Oh, Pocket Lollipops.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And that'll be during Art Basel as well, I believe, right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
I think maybe.
Yeah, I think that's December, right?
Yeah, early December. So tell me, I'll say the process of getting the band, this current band that you'll be taking on the road in December. How long does it take? I mean, of course, you and Jace have known each other a long time. You and Jess have known each other for a long time. What's the process like of, preparing the new group? How long does it take to get the trio all on the same page and ready to roll?
I don't think it'll take too long to get us off and running. I mean, these things kind of take time to gel, but we don't really have the luxury of too much time because I'll be landing just a few days before the gig. So we're going to do a little bit of heavy duty rehearsal, very intense, but very kind of contracted, very pithy. Is that a good word?
Yeah.
There'll be pithy rehearsals.
Yes.
And then, of course, we're going to get into the swing of it. By the time we get off stage in Miami, we're going to be ready to do a whole tour. And of course, then I'm going to have to turn around and come back here. That's how it always is. Once you start getting into the groove, that's when kind of it's like, oh, okay, now we got to go home. But hopefully we'll be able to do this again. I mean, the idea is I would really like to do more work at home with all my old friends.
Absolutely. If you could estimate, about how many gigs do you think you've played this year? Because I know you were you were itching to get back out in front of audiences for a while, and it seems like you really made the most of the opportunity this year.
Yeah, but me and everybody else, really. I mean, the market was kind of saturated. It's like everybody and their mother went out on the road. And so how many shows did we play? I mean, I would reckon I'm probably pushing, by the end of the year, we might be looking at, I don't know, 60 shows.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 50 or 60.
Now, in going, you spend a lot of your time traveling through Europe and, taking your gear with you and your guitars and everything. Number one, like, when you're on the road, when you're going to the airport, like, what do you usually take with you? Like, and also, have you just got it all down to like a system? Do you have like just a go bag ready, just sitting by the door whenever you need it?
Yeah, I mean, you got to try to keep things as compact as possible. One thing that we do, especially with crime, because there's so many of us, is just to avoid flying, because these days, not only is it more expensive, but they're just nickel and diming you when it comes to the weight of your luggage.
Mm-hmm.
And these days, they don't even want you to check a bag. And then if you do check a bag, they lose it. So we avoid that at all costs. So we just travel by road. We had a very pleasant nightliner on the first leg of the tour. And so that kind of cut down on your hotel expenses, because you could just sleep in the bus on the way to the next gig. And that was fun. When you do have to fly, you have to make sure that everything is compact but robust. So you have to have gear that is, kind of roadworthy, but tiny micro size, because gone are the days of taking your Marshall stack on the plane.
Oh God, I can't imagine. I see some, I'm a big wrestling fan. WWE travels with like a dozen 18 wheelers. They take the ring, the stage, the lights, and it's this whole complex thing. And I just, I show up sometimes, I'll go to see the show and I'll look at all the stuff and it looks great, but I'm like, my God, what a fucking hassle that has to be, because it's the referees that set up the ring. So the referees are like, they're part of the road crew. So they're there, if the show starts at 8, they're in there by noon setting up, and then they got to stick around afterwards to break down the set. So they might not get out of there till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes. And then they're right on the road back to the next thing to do it. And some of these guys, they do it for like 30 years. I got to help MC the jazz festival earlier this year, and which is a lot of fun. But one of my favorite parts about it was just hanging out backstage. And like, I'm fascinated by like stage hands and like the whole, the crew setup, the way like they switch from like a jazz quartet to like a full big band with chairs, music stands, and all that. It had everything switched out in like 10 minutes, which was insane.
They're miracle workers, that's for sure. Also the drivers too. I mean, our bus driver he took this vehicle in places that a nightliner has no business being in, but he did it, and just driving within his allotted hours and getting his allotted rest. I mean, he was a trooper.
Yeah, those guys are real unsung heroes. And it, I think nowadays it's kind of like they're like the connective tissue of the business, like sort of like I don't think we really appreciated like how much goes into that kind of work,
This is true.
Now, you mentioned the nightliner and all that. Would you say that we draw the comparison between the United States and Europe as far as just the logistics of travel in general? I feel like we're dragging ass about rail in this country. Like we're in America, like I think we have these like political and like class-based biases against public transportation. They kind of, and you certainly see that in a place like Jacksonville, where we deliberately, like we don't, we don't have the kind of robust bus system that we should, because people associate it with like the poor and with the working class. And I always say, like, well, you're never going to have real economic growth and economic development unless you have effective mass transit. That's a common thread, with all the big cities around the world, I think. What do you think, particularly a place like Florida that's starting to experiment with the Bright Line and all that? What can Florida learn from Europe in terms of just how they manage transit and stuff like that?
Well, yeah, trains are a good start. I mean, this week that we did here in Italy, we're running on trains. I mean, that's what we're doing. Okay, we have the promoters kind of ferrying us around from the hotel to the venue. We got sometimes you have a taxi to take you from the train station to the hotel, whatever. But generally, you can get anywhere you need to go, on a train. It's cheaper, and it's also it's more sustainable than driving a car.
Absolutely.
But since we're just a duo with fairly minimal gear, I mean, it was still a mighty schlep, but schlepping is unavoidable in this business.
Absolutely. Yeah, at this point, you've pretty much been around the world several times, particularly for all the concerts you play in Europe. Do you have, like when you have your itinerary mapped out, like you look ahead at like the upcoming dates, do you already know like what coffee shop you're going to go to? Do you know where your lunch spot is, where your breakfast spot is? Do you have I'd assume you have like a lot of pre-existing relationships in all these different cities. So when you hit each place, it's like, oh, I got to go check out this guy or whatever.
Yeah, I've got my go-tos in kind of the usual places like Brussels and Berlin and Paris. I'll have my spots. And there's a lot of places that are brand new. I mean, it's a big world. Like yesterday, I was in a place called Bassano del Grappa for the first time, and it was a beautiful, lovely little old town, like almost in the foothills of the Alps on the Italian side near Venice. And it was just a wonderful, lovely place, and a place I'd never heard of before, never imagined I would go to. So you're constantly discovering your interesting people, interesting places, and interesting people. And I think it's a fabulous way to make a living.
Absolutely. With, in this post-pandemic era, in the United States, all that stuff had an impact on population trends, like New York's lost a lot. It's a huge place still, but they lost a big chunk of population. Down here in Florida, for example, our population growth over the last 2 to 3 years or so has grown pretty much like double, if not triple, the usual rate that we've had here. And a lot of that comes from people, with the prices and stuff. A lot of people just got, musicians and creators especially just got priced out of New York, priced out of LA, San Francisco, and all that. And so you're seeing more growth. And, like you look at Jacksonville, like Florida, like places like Middleburg, Fernandina, St. Augustine, even, like the populations are skyrocketing, Well, skyrocketing might be a bit much, but they're growing much faster than usual because people from up north, they're selling their apartments and stuff, coming down here. And even with rents having basically doubled in this town over the last 5 years or so, the prices are still way competitive compared to a lot of the rest of the country, especially with no state income tax here. Have you seen any kind of similar demographic shifts in Europe?
Well, all this stuff happens very slowly, so it's hard to kind of see it with your eyes, but you read about these shifts. And for us, it's not just the pandemic and this rise of digital nomadism. It's also Brexit. You had a lot of Brits that had been living in Europe or wanting to live in Europe that they just got out of Britain. They just said, okay, I'm done, and they moved to places like Portugal and Spain and Italy. And there's also now with the energy crisis, you have what's called thermal tourism and thermal migrations, just people wanting to move to warmer places. So in our case, that's going to be Greece, that's going to be Spain, it's going to be Italy. The Greek government, as kind of terrible as it is, they were trying to attract digital nomads, and they're trying to attract these thermal tourists. And they're saying, well, here we have, we're trying to create an environment where, people can work by remote, although Greece needs a lot of work on digital infrastructure. But they do have a fair amount of warm weather, nothing like Florida, though. It does get cold in Greece in the winter. It's a bit too cold for my taste.
Yeah, you're a skinny guy like me. Neither of us are particularly into the cold.
Yeah, we ain't built for it.
There's been a lot of, I guess you could say political instability. I don't want to say instability politically in Europe, but just a little weirdness politically in Europe. I know we had Georgia Meloni taken over in Italy. She'd been percolating for a while. Le Pen is still somehow existing in France there. And now we've got this situation in Britain. Tell me, in your opinion, what's the deal with Europe's the current political trends in Europe?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is fundamentally frustration. It's legitimate frustration with just all of these different trends, things getting more expensive. The price of everything rises except wages always stay the same, right? These are things that have been going on for such a long time and nobody's been solving them. So there's frustration, which is legitimate frustration. Then you add to this all of this this propaganda, all of these kind of bad actors that are using that frustration to kind of drive wedges between people. And in here, especially now in this current climate, we have troll factories in Russia that are and have been working for a hell of a long time to kind of undermine public sentiment. And this is something that goes back a very long time. And so it's starting to bear fruit. We're seeing now the result of just a long season of discontent.
Absolutely. We've got this new probably a new prime minister in Britain. Who knows? Maybe next week, maybe next year. But
the UK is a lost cause. But hopefully we can still save Europe. So there's frustration with the European project too, that just European unification hasn't fulfilled the promises that it was supposed to, which is true. But the answer has got to be a better union and not disintegration.
Exactly. That's a classic human dilemma. When confronted with challenges, it's very easy. The instinct is often to just say, you know what, fuck it, scrap it, let's start over fresh. But then, that creates a whole generational, what's the word? Just the adjustment period. It's like the Jaguars, we're always in a rebuilding year. It's always okay, we didn't do very well this year, so let's just fire everybody and start over fresh with a new batch. And so it's another 5 years of got to trust the process. And we've been doing that for years. And while many other teams have leapfrogged us, to prominence. As far as Europe, what are some of the, particularly politically, culturally, what are some of the things that you're excited about? What are some of the bright spots happening politically in Europe? Are there any fresh new leaders that or on the rise that you've taken note of?
No, there's not much to look forward to except just hanging in there and try to. A lot of these things are cyclical, and I think we just have to sort of withstand this shitty season that's ahead of us, and try not to lose focus on the fundamentals and what's important, because I think there's going to be probably a rough ride ahead.
Now, you're a veteran journalist in Europe and here in the States. Giorgio Valentino, the journalist and writer, and Giorgio, the musician, like, they exist in the same body, but to what extent are those separate mind states, or do they kind of exist simultaneously?
I think there's a curiosity that fires both of them, and that curiosity maybe these days doesn't feel the need to have a journalistic outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's something. I don't particularly miss writing, and I think I satisfy my curiosity and my need for sort of human contact and community and expression. Mm-hmm. I'm happy with the way that I'm doing it right now, which is not to say that I'll never pick up the pen again, because I think to myself, yeah, that'd be fun to do again one day. But as you know, it's a whole lot of work.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of hard to just do it, for shits and giggles. I mean, if you're in, you're all in.
That's true.
I'm already all in as a rock and roller.
Absolutely. In the course of your playing, the gigs you played this year, did you get to knock out any bucket list items in terms of particular cities or particular venues, or like what were there spots that you got to play at for the first time that just really caught your interest? Like you make a note to make sure to circle back and play there again.
Yeah, there were many. Well, Prague was a revelation. Prague was great. Also, speaking of bucket lists, I mean, just to join Crime in the City Solution that's something that in some ways was such a remote prospect that it wouldn't even be on a bucket list. I mean, if you had asked me even as recently as 2 years ago, I mean, I wouldn't have even thought that would be possible. So that is like beyond bucket list. That's bucket list plus.
Right.
And so that's been fantastic. That's been great. I mean, playing these songs that I grew up listening to. I mean, I remember being a kid with my first guitar and trying to play these guitar licks, and here I am playing them on stage. I mean, this is you really can't beat that.
That must be just very fulfilling and kind of validating in a sense from a professional standpoint.
Yeah, it's good to know that I haven't completely wasted my entire life.
Oh, not at all.
There's some use to these otherwise useless skills that I've cultivated for so long, and at so much personal cost.
Absolutely. And now, music and career stuff aside, like, how are you? How's your heart? How's your spirit?
I feel good. Yeah, I feel rejuvenated. I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, we haven't got to the end of the pandemic yet.
Yeah.
Either. I mean, that's becoming clear. But I see, and as you mentioned, there's also all this political horseshit going on. But I think things are going to be all right eventually.
Eventually, yes, absolutely.
I think things are going to be all right. So I just, we need a dose of positivity. So I got that on the road with my friends. I got that from the audiences, and just from seeing people that I love that I haven't seen in forever. In a couple of days, I'm going to be in Brussels. I haven't been in Brussels since the pandemic. I haven't seen my old colleagues.
That'll be great.
Magazine. I haven't seen my old bandmates, and so this is this process of reconnecting, of plugging back into the world is still ongoing, but it's fantastic. It's a tonic. Got to plug back into you soon, Shelton.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jacksonville.
Looking forward to it. I'm
Jacksonville since the pandemic hit.
Oh, you'll enjoy it. It's very it's interesting. The Times Union building is gone now, which is kind of funny. They're going to put in a Whole Foods, I think, which the old bosses of the paper would be outraged. Rest their souls. How's the family doing?
The family's good. I mean, they're bored. Not much to do in pandemic times, but we're slowly getting out of that, and we're slowly. And once I get into town, I'll show them a good time.
Good. Tell your dad to make a double portion of that octopus.
Will do.
I've
And I will eat the double portion. Maybe I should tell him to make a triple portion.
Yes. I mean, yeah, the home cooking, it's like little, it's the little things I find, that, where we really, where one really vibes, And, actually I've tried octopus. I've had it a couple of places. You don't see it come up very often. There's a taco place right around the corner. They're doing like grilled octopus tacos. So that will be my Taco Tuesday plan. I'll drink less on Monday so I can afford to have the octopus taco on Tuesday. Yes, that's the plan. Mm-hmm. All right, we're about to wrap up here. A little time limit on the Zoom. The article we're doing here, this will be in the November folio. It'll be in print. We'll get some pictures and all that. And I guess I want to wrap up by asking, looking ahead to 2023. We had the same conversation, I guess, kind of around the same time last year. When you're getting the album out and talking about the thing, wanting to get on the road and stuff. And now that you've done that, are there any particular people, places, or things that you've already set your mind toward as far as 2023?
As far as 23, it should be a busy year because we got a new crime album coming out that is being completed and being mixed as we speak. In the studio in Berlin. So that's going to be great. It's coming out on Mute Records next year at some undetermined date, but we're going to get back on the road and hit it hard. And at the end of that process, we're going to be bringing Crime in the City Solution to the United States.
Oh, fuck yeah.
For a full-on tour. I mean, at least a month. I mean, we're not just doing the coast, we're going to do the whole shebang, but it takes time to get these things right and to make sure everything's lined up, because you can lose so much money on the road if you haven't thought out the tour. So we want to make sure that that's all ready. We need to have the album out. We need to, kind of get everything fired up here in Europe first, and then we will go to the States. I'm stoked about that. And I'd love to do more stuff with Jason and Jessica too. So yeah,
absolutely. Maybe you guys could record some of the gigs that you guys do in December. That's
an idea. That would be delicious.
Like through SoundCloud, Bandcamp kind of thing, kind of wet the whistle. Now, as far as taking Crime over here to America, again, it's a large band. You got to take the equipment and stuff. How, in terms of the planning, how much more complicated is the process when it involves going across the ocean like that?
It becomes more complicated. I mean, the arithmetic is the same, but you don't have the option of going home on an off week, right?
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that everything is just as concentrated as possible, because you just have to go start playing immediately. You got to hit the ground running and make sure that there's no downtime, because like that, every day off is hemorrhaging money that you need to keep the tour going. And so that's going to be the trick. And there's also, because I'm the only American in the group, there's also work visas. There's also paperwork that has to be dealt with. And so in that sense, it's slightly more complicated than touring Europe, but not insurmountably so, as long as there's a will. And I think every single person in the group is totally committed to making it happen in the States. I mean, you have some bands that just say, this is more trouble than it's worth.
Sure.
And we are not one of those bands. We want to make it happen come hell or high water.
So when it comes to, like, as you mentioned, paperwork, work visas and stuff, if the band is planning on touring next year, would they have already basically started on the paperwork or getting it together? Say for work visas and things like that, how long in advance do you have to get those applications in?
That's something I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you probably want to give yourself a few months I'm talking out my ass because I don't know, and I don't have to worry about work visas. So, but actually, the visa is not for the individual members; it's actually for the whole band. So, really,
True.
that includes me too. But those are things that I don't necessarily get involved with.
And so do you currently maintain like dual citizenship, American and Greek? Are you able to pretty much just go back and forth like and have at it?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. So I got 1 foot in the EU and 1 foot in the US.
Oh,
At the airport, I just go in the shortest line. Whichever line is the shortest, that's the line I go in.
absolutely. With Crime, the City Solution, looking ahead towards toward them coming to America, where do you think their fan base would tend to have the most concentration and stuff? Such for some reason, Chicago pops to mind, and I don't know why. Like,
Well, I know that the Bonnies lived in Los Angeles for about 10 years, and I know there's a big appetite on the West Coast, but we've been getting messages from all over the country, and so there was a prospective tour for this year that we were supposed to go during this History of Crime tour at the end of the European leg. So this it was supposed to be in September.
yes,
September 2022, and it fell through for just those reasons that I mentioned, is that it was hard to get everything compact enough to make it logistically feasible to have kind of 6 people just focused doing that job for 3 weeks or 1 month. But there was interest from audience and promoters just all over the country. So, I mean, something is possible. There's people everywhere who, just people love crime, and the people who love crime want crime to succeed. I mean, it's really an amazing thing when you meet these folks that have been, listening to, like myself, listening to crime their whole lives. And when we come to town, there's just such this immense kind of positivity. I mean, there's immense goodwill towards crime. So those are our ambassadors. Those are people who are helping make it happen. It's just the fans. I mean, everything is down to the fans and word of mouth, especially in this day and age. I mean, there's a lot of this kind of manufactured top-down marketing, but at the end of the day, if you have that solid word of mouth, and crime are legends, that's what's going to see us through.
absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Giorgio Valentino. It's always been a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure, as I say.
Love you, Sheldon.
Love you too.
See you very soon.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Ciao.
Ciao.